Good morning. I just wanted to read a book with you real quick because I'm missing our read aloud time. That's my favorite part of the day. I'm going to read to you today Ron's Big Mission. We were talking about biographies right before we left for spring break, and this is a biography. We're going to figure out why this person is important enough to write a book about. So by the end of the book, we'll be able to tell why someone decided to write about Ron. Ron's Big Mission. It is by Rose Blue and Corrine Naden. Illustrated by Dan Tate. Little boy, look at him. He's looking out the window and look in his room. I'm thinking he must be interested in something in particular, just from what's in his room. Okay. You're up early this morning, Ron. What's the rush? Asked Mrs. McNair. Come and have your breakfast. I made some oatmeal. I have to go, Mama, said Ron, tying his sneakers. I have something to do this morning. You always have something to do, said his mother with a smile. Just be home by lunchtime, okay? So looks like Mom's cooking some breakfast, and he is in a rush out the door. Wonder where he's going. Ron was 9 years old. That morning, he left his house with a plan. He had been thinking about it for a long time. It was a beautiful South Carolina summer day, and Ron looked up at the blue sky. Someday, he thought, he would be up there, flying a plane. He wanted to be a pilot when he grew up. But today, Ron had something else on his mind, something very important. I wonder what he's going to do. Ron walked down the street as fast as he could. He didn't want to be late. Hi, Ron, the grocer called from the front of his store. There you are, just in time for a donut. Morning, Mr. Douglas, said Ron. Thank you, but there's someplace I've got to be. And Ron kept on walking. Whoa, he turned down a donut. Wherever he's going must be pretty important. Down by the schoolyard, Ron saw his friend Carl shooting baskets. All right, you made it, called Carl. Hi, Carl, said Ron. I wish I could stay, but I've got something important to do. More important than basketball on summer vacation, said Carl. Are you kidding? Ron laughed. He loved to play basketball, but not today. Today was too important. Ron kept on walking. I wonder where he's going. No donut, no basketball? When Ron got to the Lake City Public Library, he stopped. This was it. He was hot from walking so fast, and he was nervous too. He took a deep breath, lifted his head high, and went inside. I'm wondering why he's nervous. Mrs. Scott was busy getting ready for all the people who would be using the library today. As the head librarian, she had to make sure that everything was neat and orderly. Mrs. Scott looked up to welcome her first visitor of the day. She smiled as Ron walked in. He was her best customer. Ron gave a little wave to Mrs. Scott and went right to the shelves. He kind of knows where he's going. I bet he's been here before. It took Ron a while to find some books. He always looked for books that showed children who looked like him. But that was hard. There were not many books about black kids on the shelves. At last, Ron found some books on airplanes. He took the books and started to walk to the front desk. Ron felt nervous and his hands felt a little sweaty, but he knew what he wanted to do. Mrs. Fielding, a white lady who was often at the library, stopped him. You can give me the books and I'll check them out for you, Ron, she said gently. No thanks, Mrs. Fielding, Ron said. I'm going to do it all by myself. But Ron, she started to say. I'm wondering what the problem is. Is he too young to check out books? I don't know. She's offering to help. Let's see. Ron was already on his way to the front desk, but he put the books on the counter. I'd like to check these out, please, said Ron. The desk clerk didn't look at him. Didn't she hear me? Ron wondered. Ron knew what he had to do. She's not even looking up. He jumped up on the counter. He wanted the desk clerk to know he was serious. "I'd like to check out these books." Oh, I said that wrong because it says he said quietly. I better try that again. "I'd like to check out these books," he said quietly. At first, the desk clerk and Mrs. Scott just looked at each other. "You know you can't check out books, Ron," said Mrs. Scott. "You can read them here. That's the rule. Only white people can check out books from the library." Ron looked at Mrs. Scott and the desk clerk politely, but he would not budge. "I always read them here. Today, I want to check them out," said Ron. Mrs. Scott and the desk clerk did not know what to do. Ron wouldn't get off the counter. People were staring. Finally, the desk clerk called the Lake City police. Oh my goodness. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I guess this was probably back in the day when the black people were not allowed to check out books. They could only read them at the library. And he's sick and tired of it. He doesn't think it's fair. And look at these children over here. You can kind of tell, maybe by the clothes they're wearing, that this was probably a long time ago. Not a long, long time ago, but it was a while back. Before what black people were able to do what the white people were. Two policemen came right over. "Let someone check out those books for you, son," said one of the policemen. "You know the rules." But Ron just shook his head. He would not budge. Just like we were talking about in class, how the running girl broke the rules because she didn't think it was fair that the women were not allowed to participate in the Boston Marathon. I think Ron is feeling like this is not fair, and he wants to stand up for what he knows is right. Now, Mrs. Scott called Ron's mother. Mrs. McNair came to the library very quickly. "I know how you feel, baby," she said, "but you have to follow the rules." "I can't, Mama," Ron told her. "It's wrong. The rules are not fair. Why can't I check out books like everyone else?" No one said anything. Not the desk clerk, not Mrs. Scott, not the policeman, not even Ron's mother. Mrs. Scott looked at Ron. She thought about all the times that Ron had come into the library and all the times he sat at the table for hours looking over so many books. He was her best customer, and she knew what she had to do. Oh, I'm wondering what she's going to do. What do you think she's going to do? Mrs. Scott walked back to her office and started writing. Ron wondered what she was doing. She's writing something. Okay. And there's Mom trying to get her down, or trying to get Ron down. Mrs. Scott returned and handed Ron a library card. His library card. Ron looked at Mrs. Scott and smiled. As he jumped to the floor, he thought he saw her smile too. "I'd like to check out these books, please," he said, handing the card to the desk clerk. The desk clerk took his library card and stamped the cards in the back of the books. "These are due back in 2 weeks," she said. Actually, he's getting to take the library books. I'm glad he stood up for his rights. That's for sure. You can see the library card has his name on it now. I'm super happy for him. Ron smiled. "Thank you," he said. He tucked the books under his arm and took his mother's hand. Together they walked home. Ron couldn't wait to get to his room. And open page 1. He's looking at an airplane book. And he's got a rocket and more airplane history books. Must be really interested in planes. Oh my goodness. He finally got to read his books, and thank goodness he's reading these books, because look what he became when he grew up. An astronaut. This was a true story. Let me read to you the author's note. "The boy who was Ron McNair grew into a man who flew planes just like he dreamed he would do. He became an astronaut. Today, everyone in Lake City remembers him. They remember him every time they walk into the library. The red brick building on 234 Main Street is a special place. The walls in the children's room were painted with pictures that showed children reading books under a huge oak tree. A space shuttle flies through the sky. Inside the library, anyone can get a card and check out books. Young Ron McNair had a dream. On that day in 1959, he made it start to come true. Because of him, many young people have a chance to dream. You can only be a winner if you're willing to walk over the edge, Astronaut McNair once told a group of children. You're eagles. Spread your wings and fly to the sky. Many years ago in Lake City, South Carolina, young Ron McNair became a hero. Years later, in 1986, astronaut Ron McNair was once again a hero. He lost his life when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded on January 28th, with the loss of the entire crew. The Lake City Public Library is dedicated to astronaut McNair. This story is a fictionalized account of the real incident in Ron McNair's life. There are several versions of this story. The version comes from interviews with Ron's mother, the late Mrs. McNair, and Gloria Wilson, administrative assistant to the director of the library services systems in Florence County, South Carolina, and Gloria Tisdale of the Lake City School District. We thank them for their help in reconstructing this inspirational story. Except for Mrs. McNair and Ron, all of the character names are fictional. So they did change the names of the librarian and things like that. But his name and his mother's name were their real names. Sorry. Anyway, I just wanted to share this with you. It was very important that he went to that library that day and demanded his rights to have library books. No matter what color you are, what race, what gender, you should be able to check out library books. And I want you to think a minute about what would have happened if he had not been able to check out the library books. Would his life have been the same? Would he have continued with his interest in airplanes and space? Would he have become an astronaut? He was a hero. So you could always go and continue researching Ron McNair if you'd like to know more about him. You could also research the Space Shuttle Challenger that exploded on January 28th. And there's lots of history behind both of those things. So I'm glad that we got to read together. I hope you enjoyed this book. And I'm going to do some more read-alouds for us. Have a great day. Bye.